Hello everyone, this is Aditya Mehta and you are listening to podcast on personality development. Everyone has a story, but an inspiring story is always a wonder to hear. And in today's episode, we are going to listen to this amazing journey from death to success, as the name of the episode suggests, right? So, in today's episode, we have a very special guest. She is a growth architect and the founder of Women's Code. We'll know from her what exactly is that. She is the one who provides visionaries and leaders proven strategies that provides clear steps to improve business systems, and she is also a fellow podcaster. So, she's going to be on the show, but till that time, what you can do is you can go down there and click on that follow button so that you don't miss out any future episodes which is going to come on this podcast. And now, intro music is going to play till the time you do that, and I'll bring the guest of today's show. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Personality Development Podcast, where we dive into the journeys of remarkable individuals who have gathered courage to have a great success in their life. And as I mentioned in today's episode, we have a woman entrepreneur who has done a fabulous job in her journey from debt to success. She is one of the top 100 global thought leaders from People Hum, and she's the one of the top 50 must follow women entrepreneurs from HuffPost. She is Beate Chelette. Hello, Beate. How are you doing today?
I'm wonderful. Thank you, Aditya. I'm excited to be on your show. Thank you for having me.
Well, honestly, it's really a pleasure having you on this show, and it really feels good because all the hard work which we did just half an hour
Yeah,
ago.
it's taken us months to get here.
Yeah. And finally, it's here. We are recording a show, and I just want to let audience know about this, the listeners. I'm really excited. I might have made some mistakes in the introduction because that's just because I'm really excited, and I'm just you know want to dive into the journey of Beate. So Beate, first of all, what I introduced, the introduction which I gave was just like an Instagram profile picture. Like it it always looks good, but always there is a story behind each and every Instagram post where a lot of hard work is there. Right? So first thing is, if you would like to give a detailed introduction about yourself, and then we can dive into your journey.
Yes, absolutely. Well, again, thank you so much for having me. So, my name is Beate Chelette, and I live in Los Angeles. I'm originally from Germany. I'm known as the growth architect, and I work with visionaries and thought leaders. I help them to scale their impact and grow their authority. And I do live at the intersection of strategy and spirituality. I believe you need to have both to be successful. And I work with people in three different categories when they're building their businesses. The one is they come to me when they need to build the business, they need the business model, they need to understand what is it that we're doing. The second is they need to actually have a growth strategy. So how do I take this idea and actually make money with it? And the third one is when they're scaling, where they have figured out these other two, and now they're at a point where they really need to come up with a growth strategy to scale and make themselves obsolete. And I'm a podcast host for the Business Growth Architect Show, and I'm excited to be here.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that detailed introduction. And, it has been a pleasure knowing you. I read your profile and I've read some amazing things over there. Okay. And I'm going to ask you about that as well. And listeners will be really, really excited because when I posted about you on my community, okay, so we do have a community where we, post about the individuals whom I'm going to interview, and they can ask questions if they have any, and then I'll be asking those questions on behalf of them. So they haven't asked any questions, but they were really excited about knowing more about you, and they were
Hmm.
really excited for your episode as well. So I'm pretty sure that they are going to love this conversation. And listeners, if you haven't joined the community yet, you are missing out on asking questions to the experts of this show. So make sure to join that community. The link is in the description. However, Beate, the things which you have mentioned in your profile. So first, I'll be going with that. Okay, like from being a single parent, okay, with a debt of $135,000. That's where you started. Okay, and that's where the entire journey started. What was it like back then, and what was the thought process back then, and when did you thought that you are going to build a business and then you are going to sell it to someone who everyone admires? I'm not going to say the name right now, but I'll keep that as a little suspense for the listeners.
Yes, only one of the richest men in the world, but we keep it secret until it's time to reveal it. So the journey actually starts a lot earlier. The $135,000 was when I was at a point where it was make it or break it moment. But before leading up to that, I had been in business for about 13 years on my own. And I came from Germany to the United States. I was a photographer turned photo editor. I always liked the business side behind creative endeavors. I love working with colorful people, with non-conforming people, with people that are a little bit different, have crazy big ideas. Because I found that a lot of people that have big ideas have a very difficult time. I call it landing their plane, because they are so in their idea and they circle and circle and circle until they run out of gas, and then the plane crashes and nothing ever comes of it. So I realized very early on that I was better at helping people that had a creative mind like I did, but they were better at the creativity than I was because I was better at the business. And I immigrated to the United States very young, in my early 20s, and started to work for someone who did photography representation, and I represented artists, and I went into photography production. I was laid off just as I had a new child, and I was, going through a terrible divorce because my husband was not who he said he was. So I found myself at a first very difficult intersection in my life, where I had a 6 months old child. I was already going through a divorce. I had just been laid off. I needed to figure out how to run a business during a massive recession and somehow come up with a plan that made me and my child survive. Thank God I didn't know back then what I know now, otherwise I would have never done it. And so I fought myself over the course of 13 years to figure out how I'm going to run this business, how I'm going to be successful. And I was at one point, I had gotten this business to about $1 million business, which in America, at least, it puts me in the top 4% of all entrepreneurs. So it's $1 million in revenue. And I was representing photographers. I was doing photo production. I was working for amazing clients, Levi, Wrangler Strauss, BMW, Mercedes-Benz, lots of companies from all over the world coming to the United States. And then I had a moment where my key employee started acting very strange. And I fired her, and I realized I fired her 2 weeks too late. She had come up with a plan on how to run a business, which was my business without me. Invoices were paid to them. It was an absolute disaster. So, not knowing much about anything, I sued them both and went into this unbelievable lawsuit. So I fought this lawsuit, because I thought, well, even if the photography representation business is destroyed, I still have the production side of things. And, in September, usually production season started, and I had about $500,000 worth of production on the book. So I thought it was going to be okay. I was going to somehow manage cash flow wise to make myself through this lawsuit while I was having other business. And then September 11th comes. And in literally 24 hours, my business was over. I mean, it was over. It was over. Every job was canceled. Nobody was coming to America, at least nobody in their own right mind. We were dealing with the effects of this horrible terrorist attack, and with the towers, so went everything I had while I was still in this lawsuit. And my attorney was able to force a settlement not too long after, and I got rid of my first debt, and I started literally at zero. I remember the moment I went to the flower mart, I got flowers from my attorney and her office, I paid my debt, I paid my attorney, and I literally had like $5 left in my bank account. So now the game starts all over again. And this is when I started to build the stock photography business. And I found myself then $135,000 in debt, and I couldn't really do anything else. I was completely stuck. I couldn't make money fast enough to offset this huge mountain of debt that I had. And I was in Germany at the time to drum up some business, and then my father had a stroke. And with that came the reality. My father did not have a stroke. My father had pancreatic cancer. And so my father dies in 6 weeks. Now, I have lost my photography business. I have lost my production business. I'm building up the stock photography business that's not quite loving me, Aditya, like I think it should, because I'm not making the money. And I am cold broke at $135,000 in debt. It is game over. I am now in Germany, and I want you to just go there mentally with me so you kind of like see what was going on, right? So I'm a single mom immigrant in America. My whole family's in Germany. We're in Germany. We just literally put my father in the grave. My phone rings. It's my office in Los Angeles, and they're telling me that we've just been served a notice. I'm losing the house. And in that moment, I literally fell to my knees. I raised my fist and I yelled at God, and I said, if you have a plan, this would be an excellent time to fill me in. And then I had no choice but to completely and utterly surrender, because I had done everything else. There was nothing else for me to do. I had turned every nickel, every stone. I've made every phone call. There was literally nothing else I could do. And I'm like, okay, fine. If it's not meant to be, bankruptcy it is. And I was fully prepared to do that. And I came back to the United States after, the funeral, and I was obviously very distressed and upset. And I, had to make calls to bankruptcy attorneys to figure out if I could, what sort of the next step is when somebody declares bankruptcy. And I figured that I was just going to go wherever the wind blew me, because there was nothing else to do. And I got a letter from the White House from the President of the United States. In my desperation, I had sent a letter to the President of the United States and asked for help, because my former mother-in-law would not stop talking about it. And so I got this letter, and it put me in touch with the Small Business Administration, which is a government agency here in the United States that helps small business owners to find funding for their business. And they helped me to underwrite my debt in a 10-year fixed loan that freed up my line of credit. That brought me to break even 3 months later. 18 months later, I'm the leader in my category, in my business. And that's when a Bill Gates company comes and knocks on my door and says, How do you do it? And I said, I won't tell you. If you want it, you need to buy it. And then they said, how much? I said, a couple million. And then they said, yes. And that's how I got to sell my business to Bill Gates for millions of dollars 18 months after the worst moment of my life.
Wow, that's a big story. I mean, going through a lot of emotional baggage. I think two things which must have really been difficult for you to grab, and I really want to ask this because there are many people out there as well who might be going through that, and they will get a lot of strength after listening to you. So the first thing is knowing that your husband is not what you thought or what he had said, and then going through that divorce, having a child. Okay, I mean, that's the biggest emotional wreck any person can actually take on. Okay, and I can completely understand how. I mean, I cannot understand. If I'm saying that I understand, that would be completely a lie. I can't understand. I can only say that I can feel what I can hardly feel, actually, what you might have gone through at that stage of life. So at that moment, what was going on in your mind, like how you are going to get out of it, how the divorce is going? What was your thought process during that point of time?
I think that I was just at the point, Aditya, where I realized that carrying him was more than I could handle in addition to what I already carried. Because I was responsible for the business. He worked in my business. And he didn't understand what entrepreneurship meant because he's always been in a corporation. So he thought there was somehow if you had a business, there was an endless supply of money. He didn't realize you actually have to make the money. So he would disappear during work hours and just vanish and not tell me where he was, but I was paying for him. So I got pretty upset about that. And I felt that that there was a value mismatch, that what I believed in was not what he believed in. Looking back today, I will say that he had his own trauma and his own story that he told himself, and he's in a very similar spot today than he was. I don't think he's really done the personal work, but that's entirely up to him, and that's his life. But I had given up faith that he was going to make the changes that were required to keep our marriage alive. And it came a point because there was a huge earthquake, which I didn't really tell you at the time. But, in the meantime, while all of this was going on, there was fires, floods, riots, earthquake. There was September 11th. There was obviously a lawsuit. There was a tsunami. I mean, there were all these things that really threw not just little branches in my way, but I mean, massive wooden logs that I had to work hard to overcome. And so in the end, I thought, if it's just me and my daughter, it's got to be easier than me and my daughter and him and my stepson, because I just couldn't do it. I had to let go of the idea that this was what was going to make me happy. And really, frankly, and we're talking about the personality development podcast here, is
Right.
you also have to realize when you're repeating a bad pattern from your parents. And I realized I had married my abusive mother, and I needed to get out of it for survival. And so I had to. But yes, was it difficult? Yes. Was it the right decision? Absolutely. Would I do it again? I probably wouldn't marry him again.
That's a great answer. Uh, but in all these processes, well, when you had to fire your colleague or secretary, where she actually built a business competing you, okay, rather than actually supporting you, okay, and that's where see, normally as business owners, okay, we always have that trust on our employees, uh, and we consider them as team members and not as employees. Okay, we consider them as a family member as well sometimes, and when that trust is broken, it's really tough to get it back. So when this was happening, when this part of your life was happening, yes, it was difficult for you. It was already difficult getting a divorce. It was a big emotional baggage which you were carrying, and at the same time, the other thing happened where you have lost the trust of someone whom you believed that she's a part of a family, but later on you found out that she's actually going and building her own business, which is
A
uh,
traitor. It's a
a,
traitor.
a traitor. Yeah, right. What was that like? And have you been able to trust anyone else again after that incident? How has that been going?
Yes, that is a very astute observation. When your trust has been betrayed to this point, I remember there was a moment where I was sitting in the deposition where she was deposed by my attorney, and I told her that it was because of her that my daughter, my then, whatever, 4 or 5 year old daughter, told me, she says, even if people seem nice, it doesn't mean that you can trust them. And I looked her in the eye and I said, you are the one responsible for bringing that to my daughter. I said, that is what she said because of you. And you will have to live with that for the rest of your life, that that's what you did. And I think after that, there's many lessons and everything, right? So if we talk about personality development and we talk about trauma patterns and about stories we tell ourselves, so I can take this story any particular kind of way. I can say, poor me, poor me, poor me. This happened to me, and I was victimized by that. But the reality of it is that I also took my eyes off the ball. I did treat her like a family member. She's an employee. She's not a family member. She's an employee. And when you make the mistake that you treat employees like family members, you can treat them friendly and with as much respect and dignity as you maybe treat your parents, even though in America not everybody treats their parents with respect. But we need to differentiate here that somebody who works for us and gets paid to work for us has not the same at stake that we do when it's our own business. And that was a mistake that I made, that I believed that she was as invested in my business as I was. She was invested in what my business was doing for her until she felt that something else was doing more for her. So we need to remember this as, if you're a business owner and you're listening to this, you need to always remember this. It is not their business. They don't have that same work ethic or that same respect for what you've built because they didn't build it. It's not their money. They feel that they're trading their time for your money. And if they feel they're giving you more than you give them, there's going to be conflict. So that was a hard lesson for me to learn. As far as what has that done for me, it certainly has changed on how I structure business systems and hierarchies and structures for my clients, where I am adamant about do not hire one person that can do 5 things, hire 5 people that can do 1 thing, because that will reduce the risk to your business dramatically. So I really took a lot of lessons out of that. Yes, sure, I could have a full-time assistant, again, that does a lot of things that we do. But if this one person, leaves, then I have to start all over again. But if I have a video editor and if I have a YouTube optimizer and if I have an executive assistant, and if I have somebody who manages the interviews, if one thing fails, I still have all the other things. I'm just replacing one piece of my business, not the entire business. And I looked at this as, in this particular case, once I got over the personal thing, I looked at this very pragmatically. And let me also say, I kind of knew something was going on. I just didn't want to see it. If I would have acted on this a lot sooner, I could have avoided the whole thing, but I didn't.
Hmm. Hmm. That's, I mean, I don't know what to say on that, because this is something which, normally people say, also the leadership lessons which we learn nowadays, where they have been constantly saying us, okay, all the YouTube videos and all the other places where leadership is being taught, that treat your employees like a team member, okay. And when they say that, okay, and when I hear stories like, you just mentioned, now little conflict in understanding these two different things, like what to make sure. Because see, as a business owner, if one is thinking, of course they are putting their money, they are putting their efforts a lot more than what employees are doing, okay. But at the same time, employees needs to be feel respected, they need to feel that they are treated well. And at the same time, you can't even trust them, because somewhere that they are working for the money which they are getting paid at the end of the week or at the end of the month. So would you break a bubble in this, like what should a business
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's
entrepreneur?
like explain yourself exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Uh, I think that's actually very smart to look into it and say, let's take this apart a little bit. A family member is different than an employee and a team member. A team member is part of a family, dynamic in a business, but it's not a family member, if you so want to. Everybody has a different position or a piece to fill in a team. Like when we do team building, and I'm a certified Myers-Briggs practitioner and a predictive index certified, we look at the dynamic between the team members, right? So that would be the equivalent of the lovely mom, the forgiving mom, and maybe the stronger dad, and maybe the sister that talks too much, and maybe the brother that's all logic and not emotional. And we somehow figure out how the team dynamics are. We know who we need to go to for what. So if we compare a team to those dynamics, then I will agree with you. By all means, call it a family. I personally don't, because I have a family, and my family does not work for me, and my family does not take orders from me, although that would be really nice if they would listen a little bit more. But the idea is that at all times, you got to remember you are the boss, and you are responsible for them making the money. You're responsible for how much money they make. You're responsible to some extent how well they do their job. You're responsible how good they feel in the business. In a family, you're not. I'm not responsible as a sister how my brother feels. My brother is responsible to figure out how he feels. I'm not responsible as a daughter how my father feels. That's my father's responsible. I'm, as a daughter, not responsible for the relationship between my father and my mother. That's their responsibility. So in a team, that's different. If I'm the head of the team, I'm responsible for everybody and everything because it's my team. So I think that there's oftentimes a little bit of a lack of clarity when we look at these dynamics, because it sounds really good. I have no problem in identifying it or clarifying it or getting more specific about what means. But I don't think your team is your family. I think your team can act like a family. But I know from my own experience and from people that I've seen, when you treat employees too much like family members, you hold on to them longer than you should. You are expecting them to do things that they're really not there for, and you're misreading what the relationship is.
Wonderful. That's pretty amazing. You explained really nicely, and I'm definitely sure I'm writing it down. Okay, once this episode is completed, okay, I am definitely going to keep this in mind. I am currently not writing right now because I really am enjoying the conversation with you, and I just don't want to get somewhere else. But this is really, really amazing. And listeners, as I always say this to you guys, make sure to listen to this podcast with intention. So make sure to sit with a book and a pen or a voice note or a note on your mobile phone and note down some of these important points, because this is really important for your personal development as well. So I hope you're doing that. Coming back to Beate, this is amazing. Okay, you made us understand what actual leadership has to be done like, how the actual leadership has to be done like. But now let us transition a bit into the business which you sold to Mr. Bill Gates, okay, one of the richest man in the world. And I would like to ask this, like, you didn't mention then what the business was, okay. I mean, you didn't mention to him as well how it is running, okay. But do you feel you can share some of the parts over here on this show?
Of course, of course. Yeah, so the business was a stock photography syndication. That means that we took existing photographs of architecture, interior, and celebrity homes. So it's the celebrity homes that made me a worldwide phenomenon. And we sold those images to books that were doing tips on interior design or showcasing homes. We were published in literally every magazine in the world that was doing celebrity homes. We had Francis Ford Coppola, Madonna, Simon Baker, Seal, um, Cindy Crawford. We had the who's who in on the A list. We had those homes photographed that had been photographed by our photographers for Elle Magazine, Vogue Casa, Architectural Digest. I mean, they were published all over the world. And when these images came out of embargo, these stories, they landed on my desk. But because I was a photo editor for Elle Magazine back in Germany, and it was my responsibility to buy stories like this, I knew exactly how to, what to do and how to build up an international syndication. So these images were sold into 97 countries in the world. And I would put overnight, I would put out the memo that Madonna's house just became available, and I offered first and second rights to purchasing the story. And I would come back in the morning, and I had 30 orders, and that's how I built this business. I mean, it was absolutely phenomenal. And Bill Gates had bought himself. So Bill Gates is obviously, he's the co-founder of Microsoft, and he is no longer active in Microsoft, but
Yeah.
he always held multiple companies privately. So he has
Mm.
multiple businesses. Now today he's mostly focused on his foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. But
Right.
I never met Bill Gates, but apparently he approved the acquisition himself. And they had purchased a company that was doing celebrity portraiture for a lot of money. And they
Mm.
wanted to grow the company, but they couldn't grow it because it was a high touch business. And so I was literally the only option on the market that was available for them for acquisition to grow that particular piece of the business. And that's how I got to sell my business to Bill Gates.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. So I think when you said to the God that if there is a plan, please fill me in, I believe God literally heard you, and He
And
literally
came
gave
up
you
with
the
a way
perfect
bigger
thing.
plan than I could have ever thought of.
Exactly, and that's pretty amazing. When miracles happen, you actually believe more in God, because, and then you become, a bit of like, God has a plan for me. Now, whatever comes through, I'm going to handle it. Okay, and that's where true spirituality also comes. That's what I believe. But I
Yes.
want to know your way of spirituality as well. Okay, because as you mentioned earlier in the show as well, that spirituality is also important. Okay, so what is what are some of the spirituality lessons which you learned while being in the business industry?
Yeah, I think that most importantly, you can't believe everything you think. I find it amazing on how attached people are to what they believe and what they think. And if it is their opinion, they're unmovable. I mean, my mother has kept her same opinions since she's, 12 years old. She has not changed. She has not introduced a new thought. That's what she believes in, and that's what she believes in, and that is what she believes in now, today, and forever. Now, in the real world, we know that we are in an innovative environment. We know things are changing. We know things are shifting. We know that when we were babies, we probably thought riding a bicycle was pretty daunting. Being on an airplane was out of reach financially. And getting married, a wild thought. Having children, preposterous. Selling a business to Bill Gates, virtually impossible. So we do know that as you go through life throws you things that are different than what you originally believed in. But would you have said to me at 12 years old, you're going to sell your business to Bill Gates one day? I would have said, number one, who the heck is Bill Gates? And number two, what could I possibly sell to a person like this? I mean, he's in computers. I'm clearly not into computers. So I could have discounted all of these things. But I think that the spiritual piece or the mindset piece is, again, clean thinking. You got to watch your thoughts like a hawk. What are you allowing your brain to process? Number two, what is your spiritual practice? Are you finding, even if it's 10 minutes a day, to use an app? I use Calm, which I really like because it's like 10-minute meditations. And that's very doable for everybody, and it's not super advanced, so you can, find these moments. I listen to a medium called Esther Abraham Hicks excessively. She is channeling two entities, Abraham Hicks, that are talking about the law of attraction. And the law of attraction, often misunderstood, is not a attraction, it's a vibration law, really. So you want to learn how to feel this vibration to attract that same vibration. So interesting. It's always the little things. I'll give you like an example. So obviously, I could go out and buy every microphone on the planet that I wanted. I mean, I certainly have the money and the means, and we have Amazon. So how difficult is it? But I've been thinking about what microphone should I be buying for my podcast and my interviews. And I'm like, I really need a better microphone. I had the Blue Yeti before. I don't know what microphone I should get. I'm doing my research. I'm looking at the Shure microphone. I'm looking at this, and I just don't know what to do. So I'm going to a podcast conference, and I won a microphone. And I'm thinking, yeah, probably get like a little dingy, like do-it-yourself microphone. I got a really nice microphone. I got a really professional, like a really, really nice microphone, like a very nice microphone.
Wow.
And I'm like, well, how is that for really wanting something and then manifesting that? And because I couldn't make the decision, God made the decision for me and just gave me one.
That's amazing.
That's the basics. And it got delivered in the mail to me, to my front door. And all I had to do is go somewhere, talk to some people, because I said I want to grow my podcast. And part of growing my podcast is having a better microphone. And then that was taken care of for me. But I was in the vibration. That was something I really, really wanted.
Wow. That is something really, really amazing. Okay. So, I mean, we as Indians, okay, we are very spiritual people. You might have heard about us being spiritual, right?
Yes.
So
yes, very much so.
So in India, in spirituality, there is a term called as being ekantik. Okay, so being ekantik means that you believe in one, and then you have nishtha, that is an unbroken belief in God, that whatever happens in your life, God is going to fix it, and He has put that problem for a bigger opportunity. So you don't have to worry about anything. Okay. So that's basically two terms. And you right there actually just defined those two terms by your stories. Okay, because being ekantik, okay, that is just believing in God, that whatever happens, God is there to protect me, and God has a plan for me. And number two, being uh being a true believer that no matter what, nothing is going to wreck me, because I'm still going to be at the top because my God is with me. So I believe that's two of the most amazing things and the most important things I feel in spiritualities. And I believe you have understood more than us in that sort of part. So thank you so much for answering that, and I really appreciate that. Going forward, okay, and I promise this would be my last question. I ask a lot of questions, but as a podcast host you have to, right? So this will
I
be
know,
my
bummer, right?
uh, so yeah, this would be my last question, and that would be, if if you would like to compare Beate 10 years back and Beate today, what would be the major difference between these two Beate?
um, I actually think that this transformation that you are intuitively picking up on really only took place this last January. I went to a spiritual journey. I went to an ayahuasca journey,
Mm-hmm.
and everything I was afraid of that was it did happen, and it kicked my butt. And I had to really sit and examine my belief system and my ego, and what I really believed in versus what I was forcing to happen, and what really was mine to happen. I think the difference now compared to even 6 months ago is that I realize that it is very exhausting to hold on so tight and to try to control everything. And number one, I'm German. Number two, I'm a strategist. I mean, if that doesn't have control freak written all over it, I don't know what does. And to lean back and to say, what is important to me at this point in my life? What matters now? And I think that's a question we need to ask ourselves all the time. And then not be afraid to say, well, maybe running a $20 million company is not that important to me anymore. Or to say, and this has been really my prayer this entire year, is like, take away what's not mine so that what is mine can come in. And stuff is breaking left and right. My sales guy, I had to let my sales guy go. My YouTube guy, quit. I am having so many changes in my business. My daughter, who had a baby 8 months ago, she moved to Las Vegas, which is heartbreaking because the baby's not in cuddle position close by where I just can drive over and grab her. She's 5 hours away. So there's a lot of trust that I have today, more than I had before, where I no longer feel that I have to be in charge of everything, even though I want to be in charge of everything. But I'm realizing I can't be in charge of everything. And frankly, a lot of my methods really suck, because when I was trying to find a microphone, I couldn't make up my mind. And then the microphone that came in was one I've never heard about, and that was way better than anything I was looking at. So it's, and it might be a very trivial example, but I think it is a great example to say, let it go. Another example was that, we had talked about, I've been with my partner for 10 years, and we had talked about getting married, and he didn't want to get married. And I got very clear that I wanted to get married, but that if he really, really, truly didn't want to, that I was going to be okay with it, because my commitment is my commitment. And on whether he's technically my husband or my partner or whatever, at this point in my life, does it really matter? And the minute I let go, literally 24 hours later, he said, let's get married. And it's taken 10 years to get here. So I think sometimes our desire to control is coming from the wrong reasons. And that's what's really different. is almost counterintuitive, right? We talk about spirituality, we talk about God, we talk about belief, we talk about that his plan's probably way better than our plan because he knows everything and we know nothing. But that doesn't mean that we're not meddling with his plan all the time. But to step back and to say, let God, right? Let go and let God. And then to actually live that and believe that it's going to be better than you being in control all the time, that almost doesn't make any sense because but I got to go back to work. I got to work more. I got to make money. I got to feed my family. But the spiritual principle is what's yours is going to automatically show up. I mean, you have to do the work, but it doesn't mean you need to manipulate everything. And that's the change that I've seen from my former self to myself right now, is this real desire to say, I just can't keep fighting like I have. I gotta let go. And whatever happens, happens. And I'm going to let it unfold the way it unfolds because I just don't have the strength or the desire anymore. My life's going to be good no matter what. But I have no idea, really for the first time in my life, Aditya, I don't know what my plan is. I have no idea what the plan is.
Well, that's amazingly said. I believe your plan would be to trust God and his plan. I mean, that's one thing for sure. And
that is probably correct, yes.
And this is really a thing which, all of us needs to hear today. And coming from a person who had been on the stage where any other person would have committed a wrong step, but you stayed strong, and somewhere I believe God gave you strength as well to be right there, be on the ground, be on the pitch, and face every delivery. I'm a cricket fan, right? So I just give cricket analogies certain times, but just being there, being to face everything, and that's what you did, and you have achieved a lot of success with that. So kudos to you, and I'm really
Thank
really
you.
happy that you were on my show, and I'm definitely sure we are going to do part 2 of this, because there are lots and lots of more questions which I would like to ask. uh, but every good thing has to end, and it has been more than 45 minutes, and I believe still it didn't felt like 45 minutes. That itself shows like how interesting this conversation was for me. But this, every good thing has to end.
Well, I
that,
mean, and for our audience, for your audience, because we had some technical difficulties going into this interview, so we were late starting. And
Yeah.
I had an interview that's scheduled right after this.
Yeah.
But as we were going through this, the guy canceled the other interview. So you also manifested enough time for your interview. So it goes both ways. So both of us have an instant gratification here.
Yes, that is so true, and thank you for pointing that out. I really wanted to, to let the listeners know that this actually happened, and it worked out in a lot of stress, but I'm just happy that it did worked out. And one last thing, Beate, and I promise this would be last. If anyone wants to get connected with you, if anyone wants to
Mhm.
ask more question to you, if anyone wants to get in touch with you for building their own business, how can they find you on the internet?
Yes, so please go to check me out. I'm available as the Growth Architect and as under Beate Chelette all over. If you want to find out what your talent is worth in this climate, if you're thinking about going in business for yourself, we have a quiz called whatsyourtalentworth.com. And in a couple minutes, a mathematical calculation will give you an actual number of what your talent is worth in this market. Quite fun and very popular quiz. And if you heard something and you go, I want to speak to her, go to uncoverysession.com and grab a 50-minute slot. Happy to talk to you about business because that's what I do. And for anybody else, just drop into my DM anywhere on social media. And let's also give Aditya a shout out for thanking him for what he does. So wherever you go and listen to this show, please go there now, subscribe, like, and leave a comment, even though if it's just like a heart, that says that you have watched or listened to this episode in its entirety. Everything is dealing with engagement. So if you give him a little bit more engagement, he can help more people with messages like the one we shared today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for saying that out loud. I really appreciate it. And somehow I feel I should cry, but I won't. But thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you so much for the kind words. And audience, I know that was a lot to take in. So I'll mention each and everything in the description. So you are just a click away from Beate Chelette. So make sure to go ahead, follow her on Instagram because she posts some amazing podcast clips over there. Make sure to listen to her podcast as well. I'll mention the link in the description as well. And make sure to mention to her while you message her that you have heard on Podcast on Personality Development.
On this show.
Thank you so much. With that being said, this is Aditya Mehta along with Beate Chelette signing off from this episode. See you in the next one. Till then, peace out.